We're in a time now that the most important thing is the heart behind stuff. And I think if we keep that, everything else will kind of work itself out.
You're listening to HBCU in Entertainment, where diversity, equity, and inclusion refine the future of entertainment. I'm your co-host, Amira Johnson, Alumni and Campus Relations Coordinator at ECOP, and welcome back to another episode. In this episode, we're featuring one of our amazing alumni, Myles Chandler, Assistant to Producer and Director at DreamWorks Animation. I can't wait for you to hear more about his journey. With that being said, let's dive into today's conversation. I'm so happy that you could be here today and join us. I'm really excited to talk to you, hear more about your journey, and I just know there's going to be a lot of gems and wisdom that's dropped today. So I'm so excited for our community to hear all those things that are going to be dropped.
Awesome. Ian, I'm excited to talk about it.
Yes. So I'd love to kick us off. I just want to ask you to start. Would you mind introducing yourself and sharing a bit more about your professional journey so far?
Awesome. Yeah, my name is Myles Chandler. I am currently working as an assistant to producer director at DreamWorks Animation, which is actually kind of folded into how I sort of got my start in the industry. I was a member of the HBCU in LA program during the years of or the summers of 2022 and 2023. I started off as a DreamWorks intern, actually, did a virtual internship with DreamWorks way back in the spring of 2022. And then they extended my internship, which is kind of how I was able to participate in the HBCU program for that summer. So I did that in total, coupled together for about 9 months with DreamWorks, which was really an amazing opportunity to not only get connected within the industry, but also to sort of grow myself and give myself sort of the opportunity to envision kind of what a life for myself in LA working in the entertainment industry would kind of look like. I think from the undergrad perspective, and a lot of what the great thing about HBCU in LA is that it kind of demystifies what that life looks like. Because for many of us that are aspiring young creatives and change makers and innovators in our industry, all of this is a dream until it isn't. And so kind of being able to put not only just my eyes on what that looks like, but like to be walking in it every day was a really amazing and life-changing opportunity. From there, I went back and I finished my senior year at my alma mater, Morehouse College, and I graduated in May of 2023. And then I came back out for summer of 2023 with HBCU again. I interned at Lionsgate in the TV development and current series department. And then I returned to DreamWorks at the end of the summer in August after I got a full-time offer, and I've been here ever since.
I love that for you. Congrats on the internship extension and then landing that full-time offer. That's awesome. I just love full circle moments like those. So I love that that just happened and I was able to kind of help you start your career journey. It sounds really awesome. So you mentioned that you're working at DreamWorks, you're working in the entertainment industry. What inspired you to pursue a career in this industry?
Yeah, I have always known that I wanted to be in entertainment, but I actually got my start in theater when I was very little. I thought I wanted to be on Broadway. I wanted to do musical theater. It was something that I thought was really cool. I was in a junior theater program pretty much from my eighth grade year, I think, all the way through my senior year of high school. And I was so convinced that that was going to be what I did just because I've always loved storytelling. I've always loved the ability to change other people with fictional circumstances. And I think that people can learn a lot and grow from watching characters on screen or on stage or in the theater that look like them or that are going through things that maybe they're going through, and when they're able to make those comparisons, they're oftentimes able to take that back to their real life, because that was something that I was doing. It's kind of always been something that I've used to process the world around me when things feel really scary or big or too much to handle. I look to my favorite TV characters and to songs from musicals that I listened to as a kid, and that was my weird way of figuring out the world around me. And so I thought that doing that in front of the camera or on stage was kind of the way that I wanted to have that impact. And I remember during my senior year of high school, I was doing my audition circuit for most of the collegiate theater programs that I was trying to get into. And I remember talking to my mom and I was just like, I'm so tired. Like, I've been auditioning for like weeks now. And she's like, you know that if this is what you do, that's kind of like the rest of your life. And I was like, oh, no. And I actually don't want to do that for the rest of my life. And so I kind of like was confronted with this, like, okay, like I know that this is the industry that I want to work in. I know that I want to contribute to telling stories, but I had always envisioned that it was going to look one kind of way. And then when it didn't look that way anymore, I was kind of like confused. And so during my freshman year at Morehouse, I was a theater major just because that is what I'd been planning to do the entire time. But I knew I wanted to kind of make the shift toward TV and film at some point, and then COVID happened. And then I kind of didn't have a choice because of the nature of the pandemic. The theater sort of realm was kind of upended, as were many industries, of course. The theater in particular is a medium that thrives off of people's ability to come together and to sit in a room together. And so that it completely was turned on its head. And so a lot of people were turning more toward virtual theater productions and things of that nature, and Zoom plays and documentary filmmaking and things of that nature, other mediums that sort of could bridge the gap. And that was kind of how I sort of started to gain an interest in TV and film. And at the time, a mentor of mine at Morehouse, who also is an HBCU alum, Jared Saffold, was interning at DreamWorks. This was a year before I was. This was 2021. And he was like, hey, like, have you ever thought about this? And kind of just presented to me as like another career option to consider. He's like, you're a really good writer. You really love cartoons. And I was like, I don't know that animation is something that I would want to work in just because I'm like, I can't draw. And he was like, there are things that people do in animation besides drawing. And like, that kind of opened my eyes to like, oh, there is a much bigger world out there in this industry than I thought there was. And so I, started working on my resume and figuring out what those transferable skills were. I added a major. I double majored from that point on in theater and film. And then, yeah, that kind of is how I sort of began to make my way toward where I am now.
I love that. That was such a beautiful answer. I relate to the whole theater love for it, the community. I also was involved in a theater program. So it's something that's so unique and so hard to describe, but it's just a beautiful feeling gathering with other people, telling these stories and making people feel things. So, yeah, now I'm getting all the flashbacks to those days. But yeah, I
Yeah,
love that for you. Definitely want to talk about musicals after this, not during the interview.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Anytime.
But you mentioned Jared Saffold, who is the co-founder, I believe, and president of the alumni board. And I know you're on the board as well. So I would love to just talk about that connection, ECOP as well.
Yeah.
What has ECOP meant to you throughout these years, and how has it shaped your career journey?
Yeah, like I was sort of saying before, like the ability to be able to envision what this life looks like in a tangible way. I think there's a lot of things that, we can dream of ourselves in theory and in practice. And I think the importance of a dream is so vital to the human experience. I think being able to have something to aspire to helps me to get up every day and go to work and to aim to be successful because I'm aiming for something more. But I think what is even more important, or not even more important, but I guess just as important as a part of that is figuring out the how and the why and the what that looks like. And I don't think that you need that to get started, but I think at some point in your journey, people find that you needed to keep going. It's a lot harder, at least in my experience. I can't speak for everybody, but it's a lot harder in my experience to kind of keep chasing after the goal when I don't know where I'm going. And ECOP in many ways helped me figure out where I was going. I had always been a dreamer. I think the theater kid in me sort of never dies, and that it's like we're gonna find a way, and teamwork makes the dream work, and all of the things, and all of that is true, and that's all well and good. But I think being a part of this program kind of was like Mama Stacey and Papa Ted never took that away, but they were like, let's focus that. Let's channel it towards something. Like I remember countless conversations that I had during my summers that I spent in the program where I would tell them what my plan is, and they're like, okay. And I'm like, I haven't got that far yet. And they're like, that's kind of the first step, you know? And so being able to sort of order my steps in a way, or at least help me to order my steps for myself, because I think that's the other thing that's so great about the program is that it instills where there isn't one and then fuels it where it is a sense of initiative. I think in all of the students that pass through the program, being out in LA for the summer, oftentimes for many of us by ourselves, for many of us, our first times away from home, and not that, college isn't home away from home as well, but like there's a sort of safety net that comes with that doesn't exactly exist in the same capacity when you move out or make the big transition to the West Coast. You know what I mean? It's like there's a there's a realness about it. Not that college isn't a real thing, but like, it's a bubble. You have a built-in community and you have professors and kind of the expectation from everybody that, you're a little silly and you're young and you're going to make those mistakes. And that's not to say that it dissipates with this, but that ECOP sets an expectation of a standard of excellence of rising above, and putting your best foot forward at all times. And I think that that's something that kind of inspired me to take the necessary steps and actions to make those dreams more of a reality.
Beautiful, beautifully said. I love that answer. So you mentioned earlier that you are a graduate of Morehouse. So I'd love to talk to you more about that for a bit. So as an HBCU graduate, how did your education and community also contribute and prepare you for this industry?
Yeah, like I said, during my sophomore year, I became a double major and I was in the cinema, television, and emerging media studies program at Morehouse, which was the film program that kind of focused, yes, on film and cinematography and things of that nature, but also just the sort of, I guess, multidisciplinary approach to the craft of storytelling in general. Classes that focused on writing, but classes that also focused on scene work and not classes for you as an actor, but how to work with other actors and things of that nature from a directing standpoint and stuff like that, and kind of tackling multiple different approaches versus kind of like more of like I'm on the screenwriting track of things, I'm on the directing track of things. It kind of it's more of like the program is sort of designed in more of like a crash course and pulling different things from film, which I think gives you a bit of a multidisciplinary approach. I think the challenge that I think is an important thing to add into the conversation, though, which I think is one of the most amazing things about HBCU in LA, is that it taps young Black creative potential in a way that many times, because of lack of funding and lack of resources that our HBCUs want to provide those sort of resources and programming and opportunities for their students, but aren't always able to do so because they don't always have the means because of a sort of larger, I guess, systemic view of what the Black mind and the Black spirit has to bring not only to the workforce, but to the greater world at large. And that isn't something that is solved overnight. And that isn't something that is solved by ECOP alone. But I think it does a hell of a job, forgive my language, of bridging that gap. I think that's such important work that I know is sort of integral to Mama Stacey's mission around why it's so important that there is a way to change this industry if you know where to look. If you know what you're looking for and you know how to find them, it's possible to find those sort of metaphorical diamonds in the rough. And the reason that it's more in the rough is not because they're few and far between, but because of the rough circumstances, I think, in just that it's hard for HBCU students to oftentimes make the jump to the West Coast without the ability to ascertain housing. Even if you are able to land an internship, how do you figure out the means of getting there? Is it a financial barrier? Is there a transportation barrier? If you are able to get that housing and secure it, how are you figuring out how to, feed yourself during that time and navigating a new city that you've never been in and doing that without community? The structure of the program kind of does all of that. And it doesn't take away the autonomy. It doesn't remove your independence, and that you're still responsible for yourself. You're still responsible for your own needs being met, but that it helps to bridge that gap. We'll take care of making sure that you have somewhere to stay that's safe, that is in a good part of Los Angeles that is sort of central to everything, but it's still on you to figure out your commute. It's still on you to figure out your food and things for that, like that during the given week. And so it still teaches you that level of adult independence, but not making it a sort of Herculean task in a way that doesn't make sense for 18 to 20 something year olds. I think that that is really, really powerful. And I think also speaking to that aspect of community and that you're not doing it alone, that you have a support system of people who know more than you in the form of Leonard Washington and Holly Mae and Mama Stacey and Papa Ted. You have resources and people to lean on. But I think even more importantly than that, I venture to say, is the sense of community that you have in camaraderie and having other people. And that network extends beyond just your time during in the cohort. That's why we have things like the alumni board and that sense of family and community. Like the friends that I made in that program are still my friends now. That's who, when I have a new idea for something that I want to pitch, those are the people that I call over, like, hey, do you want to come to my apartment and we could talk this out? Or when one of us is up for a new job, we, mock interview with each other, or we do resume lookovers to make sure like that sense of togetherness was built and forged during that program. And I think that that is an absolutely inquantifiable and invaluable experience to have had.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah, I think there's no other program like HBCU in LA. When you think about it, you just hit everything on the head perfectly. The community piece, the housing, the location, putting you in a location that's central to everything, but also fostering that form of self-independence, setting your alarm to make sure you get up on time to start that commute early and just the
Absolutely.
little things. But yeah, I don't think there's a program that's out there like it. But I think that the industry is changing a lot. There's been a lot that's happened with COVID, the strike, but I think there's still a need for a lot more to happen just to see more representation on screen. So I'd love to ask you, what changes would you like to see in the industry to make it more inclusive and equitable?
Yeah, that is a big one. I think that is a really good question. I think we're living in a time right now where the world does not get any less scary, seemingly by the day, by the hour, by the minute. And part of what I think sometimes often my challenge is in working in entertainment is that I have to remind myself almost constantly that the work that we do is life-changing work. I won't say never, but I'm like, I know myself, I'm very squeamish. I was not going to be somebody's surgeon. I didn't have any interest in practicing law, but I wanted to help people. I think there are all kinds of careers out there where you have a direct impact on the world around you. And I think that those voices are so needed. But I think oftentimes it can be a daunting thing to look at the larger scope of entertainment. And it's like, well, we make movies and TV and things like that, or we do marketing or whatever the case may be. And it's hard in the larger social world, at least for me, to think about that. And it's like, but what is the mark that I'm leaving on the world? But I think the dream and the goal for most people that work in entertainment is that it starts from this seed of understanding that being able to change someone's heart is it can be the difference between life and death. And I don't mean to dramatize it in that way, but for many people it is. I've heard countless stories from friends and from people in online communities when in shows that I've watched. I remember hearing stories of people during the series finale of This Is Us, which is like one of my favorite shows of all time, and people talking about like this show like changed my life, and like seeing this thing showcased on TV help me to get out of a bad situation or help me through my marriage or whatever it is for people. Like, I think that a field of work that has that level of impact has to be taken seriously. I think to answer your question about what I would hope to see differently is I want to see more from this industry in understanding the gravity of that. I think in many times we get caught up in what is the most marketable and what is in line with our company branding, and I think all of that is important things to consider, but I think that what is paramount at the center of all of that is whose heart is this going to touch. And I think oftentimes we get lost in the sauce of the politics of the landscape of the work that we do. And I think having empathy in general for everybody, I think having empathy nowadays is needed more than it's ever been. And so I think that that is multiplied or it needs to be amplified within our industry specifically because of the reach that we have. The when you're making a feature film and when you're making a limited series that's going to be on streaming services, it has the potential to reach tens of thousands of people. And being mindful of that at every step, in the writing process, in the development process, in the production process, in the post and edit process, in the marketing cycle leading up to the release of the film, in the press tour following, the marketing run of things. Like, I think at every step of the process of creating something, being mindful and remembering the heart and the why of it, and people having a why is so important. And I think that's I wish I had a more tangible answer of I want to see X thing, but I think that is the best way that I could sort of encapsulate my hope for all of what I'd like to see more of in the industry, because I think we're in a time now that the most important thing is the heart behind stuff. And I think if we keep that, everything else will kind of work itself out.
Absolutely. So many gems you just dropped. I want to like write down everything you're saying because it's so touching and so real, like just recognizing the gravity of things versus producing what's marketable, but it's all about the heart and the impact. February's coming up, so we just love to recognize and celebrate Black history. So it's a big question, but what does Black history mean to you?
Black history to me means the ability to recognize what has been done so that we know what we can still do. I think it's really hard to plan for the future and to know what comes next when you don't know what's come before. And I think not only for Black people, but for this nation and the world at large, recognizing the impact of Black scientists and Black writers and Black politicians and abolitionists and, the countless amount of things that we've had our hand in over the course of time shaping the world. I think knowing that and acknowledging that and paying respect to that and homage to that, and not in a way that is performative and theatrical for the month of February, but in a way that permeates how we carry ourselves day to day, year round. I think that that's important because it is really hard to figure out where you're going if you don't know where you've been. I think understanding where we've come from and what we've accomplished and how we did it, and how oftentimes we did it with less than what we have now. So much of what we have today is because of achievements and accomplishments that were made by people that came before us that were working with infinitely less resources and support and opportunity, and we're still able to persevere and thrive and be successful. And I think being reminded of that from the lens of a Black person is having no fear of challenges that may arise, because if they can, so can I. But I think for the larger world as a whole, because I think it's also important to talk about what Black history means globally and not just to people of the diaspora. I think that aspect of things, there's lessons to be garnered from that, from everybody, and that knowing the history of our world and the true history of it, whatever it is, the good, bad, and the ugly, knowing and understanding the truth of that informs how we make decisions and how we move forward in the here and now. And I think that's why that's so important.
Yes, beautiful answer. Myles, thank you so much. I wish we had more time. You are amazing and just I am so excited to see what you do. I think your future is really bright and congratulations on all your success.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. It was really nice talking to you guys.
I want to thank you for joining us today and tuning in to another episode of HBCU in Entertainment. If this episode resonated with you, please comment, rate, and review the podcast. Your feedback means the world. Until next time, we appreciate you for lending us your ears. Catch you in the next episode.